Hello, my name's Gail. Welcome to my channel. I am the energy-led woman, and literally all that means is that I look at life through energetics. I live life through energetics. I let energetics lead me and help me create the life that I live. So I harness energy, I utilize energy that I feel within me, I utilize energy that I feel around me, and bring that all together and talk to you about it. It's pretty much what I do. So this video in particular is going to be talking about the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. Now, I've recently read this series. I'm on my first read. So this is the first read. I have gone from start to finish. I've immersed myself into the story. I've come out the other end, feeling all the feels. And I just want to chat a little bit about that, because stories and fantasy books have become really important to me. I have in my previous life, previous kind of eras of me, I've been very into self-development and read a lot of self-development books. I still do listen to kind of podcasts and things like that, but the bulk of my development nowadays comes from fantasy books, because you don't get energetics out there in self-development books, really. I'm not saying you don't, because let's talk about Joe Dispenza. You know, there is stuff out there, but I actually know through my human design that I understand and I take on board information and knowledge through storytelling, through stories, much easier than when someone's just telling me something, you know? And again, you know, I then share my stories with the world and anybody who wants to hear it and tap into it, and hopefully that helps them too. So I kind of get knowledge through stories, and then I pass that knowledge on through stories as well, which, let's face it, is a very, very kind of ancestral thing to do, right? So I have always loved fantasy stories, and yet when I think about it, the faraway tree, the magical faraway tree, is coming out as a movie soon, and I can't wait. And I realised that was one of my favourite books as a kid. Now, every now and again in my life, will suddenly pick up a book series and I will immerse myself in it. And I will reread it, and then I'll come out of it potentially a changed person. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And then I'll come out of it, and then life goes on, and then another series pops onto my radar, and I grab it and I do the same again. And I've always done that here and there. So things like Hunger Games, Divergent, I've got Game of Thrones stuff upstairs, stuff like that. And I grabbed a Fourth Wing book at the airport in April, and it really activated something in me. And it's taken me a long time to ease myself away from that series, but in October I began the Throne of Glass series, and I have finished it last night. So all the feels. So just to kind of get that down, right? So instead of reading self-development, I have moved on to fantasy, romantasy, fantasy, whatever it might be, whatever book takes my fancy. And that, for me, has been a very interesting journey, because moving from that kind of masculine kind of learning process to this more feminine storytelling kind of process, less about kind of the hustle and understanding what you do and doing this, and more about what is this activating in me, is really, really interesting from the perspective of being energetically led. So let's just dig into that before I start digging into these books, because if you are here because you've searched Throne of Glass, you might be here expecting a deep dive into this book series. You might be here expecting plot lines and threads and parallels and synchronicities and lore and world building and all that kind of stuff. That's not what I'm going to be talking about. I am going to be talking about the experience from an the read from an energetically led perspective, okay? So let's first of all talk about the brain and what happens. So the brain, okay, when you read a book series or when you listen to a book series, I flick between the two. I don't have as much time to sit and just read a book, whereas I do have time to plug some earphones in and listen. So, you know, it depends. I suppose it depends which one vibes for you and which one vibes for me. But when you either one of those, your brain, your imagination is on. It is turned on and it is building that world for you within the brain, okay? So you're listening to the descriptions, you're listening to what people look like, you're listening to what the landscape is. You're listening to all that and your brain is creating that. It's imagining it. When we use our imagination, that is so powerful. From in the kind of the world that I live in, in the law that I kind of believe in, which is this energetically led. So the brain is actually kind of creating that world for you. So being in that imagination is really powerful, first of all. Secondly, when your brain is doing this, it is creating neurological pathways. Okay, it's creating new pathways in your brain, in your brain and in the way of being and in who you are all the time. Okay, while you are doing that whole process. And that is slightly different to the TV. The TV, you're not imagining it. You're not creating it in your mind, okay? You are watching someone else's creation of it, okay? So it is slightly different when it comes to the mind, okay? Now, we can move into the body, okay? So the body, the mind creates the visual, the image, the imagination, and then the body creates the feelings, the emotions. That's where the energy lies. That's energetics, okay? So your body is something sad happens, in the book and you feel sad for them, it's creating an emotion. That is energy. So when your body is creating emotions, then that is also kind of part of your body's memory. It becomes part of you in the same way as your mind creates new neurological pathways. Now, the key thing here is that your body or your mind cannot distinguish the difference between what you are imagining, what you are feeling, driven by a book, than what you are experiencing in day-to-day life, driven by life. So that's a really interesting key point when it comes to what you read and what you are taking on board. Now the TV, just to kind of bring that comparison back in, the TV creates emotions and helps you to see things, but it's not your imagination that's creating it, and that's like a real key difference, okay? But other than that, your TV is doing the same thing. There's sound that comes out of your TV. When you're watching a horror film, something bad's going to happen because of the music that's in the background, because it's creating a frequency that is generating an emotion within you, okay? So this is all really important stuff when it comes to actually reading and developing yourself, developing your soul, developing your mind, your imagination, what you believe you can achieve, and developing your emotional mastery and what goes on, and noticing what's happening in your body and creating that imprint in your body as well as the neurological pathway in your mind. Okay, so frequencies are what creates life. Energetically, energy and frequency is what creates life. So every single thing in the world, when you zoom in on down in the microscope, you get to the kind of smallest thing that you can see. Nothing is solid, everything is moving. It's all cells and particles moving around each other, and that is in effect what energy and frequency is. So when we talk about frequency, we talk about the speed of that. So when we talk about being excited, we often describe it as buzzing, right? That's that, right? When you are excited, your cells are literally buzzing around your body really quickly. So it's making you feel really buzzy. But what's also happening is the frequency that you're putting out into the world is also buzzy. So you put out a frequency into the world, that frequency goes out there into the world, matches, if you like, to things that are of that same frequency and brings them back to you. So what frequency you give off is really important as to what you get back in life, okay? So just understanding that alongside the fact that we are reading a book that our brain is creating the images for, the imagery for, we're changing neurological pathways, we're changing emotional imprints, energetic imprints, and we're giving off frequencies, different frequencies, because of the books that we've read, listened to, whatever, and the TV that we've watched, okay? So, for me as well, why fantasy becomes important. Why fantasy, sorry, had to just adjust the fire, Anyway, why fantasy becomes important is because it is an area of knowledge that is treated as a bit childish, a bit daft. You're a bit daft, you're not really serious if you're a bit childish if you're following these books, right? So that to me straight away gives me a kind of like, why do we think that? What's going on there? And then I dig into that a little bit more energetically. And ultimately, when we dig into who we are as a human being, what a human being is, the more information that I read, the more stuff I read about brains, bodies, storing emotion, stuff about frequency, what's in, like, everything, the more I believe that a human being is much more than what our society and patriarchy has told us it is, okay? We are powerful beings. We thrive on frequency. We create from frequency. When people say the world's a hologram and everyone goes up in uproar, it is a hologram created by the frequency that you give off, that everything around you gives off. It creates the illusion of a kind of solid real world when actually it isn't. Put your hand in there and go really deep down to the bottom and it's just loads of cells and particles whizzing around, okay? So we do not fully understand our capabilities as human beings. And when you start playing around in the energy and the frequency, you start to realize that there is more to human beings than, what we're told. Now, there's a whole reason why we've ended up here. And one of the reasons, and I dig into this a lot in my living course called Woman, I dig into this a lot because it is really, really powerful to understand who you are as a woman and why you haven't been taught the how to use your intuition, your wisdom, and the pieces that make you different to a man, okay? Patriarchy, that's about the man's society, okay? Anyway, so when you go back to kind of things like the witch trials and things like that, women and men who helped them were killed for the knowledge that they had, okay? Now, that means that knowledge didn't get passed down. It didn't get passed down from, someone in your ancestry didn't kind of pass it down to her daughter, who passed it down to her daughter. There's this whole generation who were taken out of society, okay? And their books, their journals, what they might have kept, they're not here for us anymore. There is this whole area of humanity and being a human being, being a woman, that has been removed from our understanding. And that it is rising again, and I believe that fantasy helps us to unlock parts of that, because we do end up in worlds where we're talking about witches, about energy, about dragons, about all that kind of stuff, maybe having a superpower, a signet, or battling evil, all this kind of stuff. It generates a remembrance in us. It activates something that is coded deep down within us that we have turned off. So then you come into epigenetics, okay? Now, I didn't want this to be about why I read books. I wanted this to be about Throne of Glass. But then you come into epigenetics. You can turn on and off your genetics, okay? You can do that, okay? It is a thing, Go find Joe Dispenza. Go look into some of his work and dig into that. But so right now, as you have evolved into your life, you have probably turned off every single genetic kind of switch that links to this kind of magical, energetically led, understanding frequencies, there's just so much linked to that. And you've probably turned it off. Now, reading these books revives something, it reconnects something, it flicks a switch back on, or at least that's what I find, Okay, I can only talk to you from experience. Everything that I say is from my experience, it's from my research, it's from how I have felt going through these situations, these journeys. I can only tell you about that. Anyone can only tell you about that. I am not here to give you a step-by-step process of how you can do that. I am here to open you up, to activate you, to help you remember that, you know? So I believe that these books bridge a part of human society, human skill set that we have forgotten and suppressed. And I believe that's for men too, because I believe as we've rolled this out, this isn't just a witchcraft woman thing. However, I can only speak from a witchcraft, not a witchcraft, but a woman perspective, because I am a woman and I see and I experience and I do things as a woman. So I can only talk about it from that perspective. So this isn't really a kind of like a witchcraft female only account, but I can't be inclusive because I don't know what it's like to experience life from that perspective. I can only share with you from the perspective that I've lived. Anyway, that was a bit of a kind of off there, wasn't it? So before I go and start digging into Throne of Glass, I think I've covered off kind of like why I read fantasy and what it's about for me and all that kind of stuff. So before I start digging into the Throne of Glass stuff, I just want to let you know that if some of that does vibe with you and you're like, whoa, I need to find out more about that, I do have 2 courses that are living courses, which basically means as I add to them, I increase the price. So we start off low and, you know, right now there is only intros available for both courses. And as I drop in more sessions, more activation sessions, then the price will go up. So I have Woman, and I have one that I haven't quite settled on the title of, but if you are into books and stories, this is probably the one that will help you grab your life and take your life forward in an energetically led way, but by holding the reins of life. And it's about being the author, the main character, and the reader of your life story. And at the moment, I'm not settled on a title for that one yet. So hopefully by the time this video goes out to you, I've settled on a title. They're available for you to access, and you can go and check those out if you want to. As I say, if you pay for them now, you will get a discounted rate because there isn't anything for you to do apart from watch the intro. And then from there, as I start dropping in information, the price will go up, but you will have got in at a low price and you will get the episodes that follow. So that's me, that's what I'm about, that's kind of leading you into the kind of the follow-on of what I'm going to talk about, which is this book series. I am gutted I did not do this for the Empyrean series when I got to the end of it, and I must have reread that about 4 times. So I'm going to trust that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this kind of first initial video. I'm going to go and I'm going to read Quicksilver and Brimstone over Christmas, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to do a little bit more of an in-depth chat about each book. So as I say, it isn't necessarily reviewing the book, reviewing the storyline, reviewing the plot threads and all that kind of stuff. This is more about reviewing the energetics. How is this book transforming you as you read it? How is it transforming me as I read it? That's what these kind of, those are going to be about, and they're going to come in the new year. And then I think we're just going to see how it rolls out. But if the worst comes to the worst, I will do this with Empyrean series at some point next year. And, you know, maybe on the countdown to book 4. Anyway, so let's get on with it. Let's start running through them. Let's start talking about what activations, what's happened to us, to me, as I've read through this whole book series. What are the activations? What are the experiences? What's been recoded in my body? How my frequency has probably changed? All that kind of jazz. Let's go. Okay, so dipping into book 1. So book 1 for me was about remembrance. It was about kind of this almost like seeing through kind of the illusion a little bit. So we are introduced to this, let me take my glasses off. We are introduced to this world where magic, where power is contained and suppressed, right? It hasn't disappeared, it hasn't been eradicated. It's kind of simmering under the surface. Now, when you read stories about that and you are activating the imagination, you're activating your emotions and stuff like that, you are gonna start to see the world slightly differently. And you might see how that is showing up in your real life just because you have an awareness of it from reading this book. Okay? The book follows this thread of surviving a system that isn't designed to support our heroine, our female main character, right? So surviving in a system that isn't designed to support you. And again, when we're bringing that to our conscious awareness, when we're rewriting those pathways, when we're feeling the emotions of the injustice of that and the anger and the grief and things like that, we're awakening this emotion within ourselves linked to that, right? Linked to the injustice of our power, our human power being controlled and governed, our female intuition, our feminine wisdom being controlled and governed, okay? There is this female main character who is learning how to survive in this patriarchal society and the systems that evolve around that. Are we feeling any kind of like, any comparisons right now? Is there anything coming up for you that's like, oh, exactly. This is what this book is doing. It's reminding you, it's activating that remembrance, and it's bringing that awareness. So a lot of energetic work is being aware of something, bringing it to your conscious mind, and then once it's in your conscious mind, you can see, and you can't ever unsee it, right? So then there's this kind of vibe of, being underestimated by those around her, but yet she's quietly confident in all that she is. And that for me is a real kind of key piece that we, as women, it takes a lot of grounding work, a lot of strength to actually ground in that inner confidence of who we are, right? Because we are surrounded by who we should be. We're surrounded by a patriarchal picture of what the woman should be. Anything that doesn't kind of fit into that is, you've got to squeeze yourself into this kind of shape to really fit into society. And so we often underestimate who we are, and the idea that this female character is being pushed into all those shapes and into those structures while knowing who she is, that is going to activate that within us as well. So book 1, remembrance, becoming aware, just kind of like being aware of this society that she's in, that it isn't all it seems, and she knows it's not right. She knows it doesn't feel right. It doesn't quite settle with her. There's something there, but we are yet to uncover what that might be. Okay, book 2, Crown of Midnight. So if I needed to give a word to describe what book 2 was about for me, then it's truth, okay? So book 1 was remembrance, and that was, through containment and survival. Book 2 for me is truth, and with that is like an awakening. So she's worked really hard, right? She's won her freedom, and yet she gets there and kind of reality check, it's not quite as kind of amazing as what she thought it was going to be. There is restrictions, conditions, and obedience required within this freedom, right? She's still got to conform to this society that she doesn't believe in, right? So there is a whole thing there that activates within me, which is, we are put on a trajectory, a pathway of what is life, and what is a successful life, and what is a good life, and we follow that pathway. And if you know about the 7-year cycles, I did a video recently, you can go find it. We go through 7-year cycles in life, and I think it's in the 30s, it's maybe the 35 to 42 cycle, we kind of get that reality check. So we've gone through life, we've built it, we've done the things, we've done all the things that we're meant to do, and then all of a sudden we kind of look around and go, is this it? Is this it? Am I just paying bills for the rest of my life? And that's kind of this feeling that I get from this part of her life, you know. And so that's kind of like what kind of comes through, what can be activated within us when we're reading this book too, okay? The other thing that really comes through is this is where her identity starts to separate from the conditioned identity that she has built through her life. So through her conditioned experiences, through, you know, what life has led her to become, she has become this particular person, and this is who she is in society, and this is how she fits in with society. But that is a very, very different vibe from who she is. So who we become from life and experiences and all that kind of stuff is what we are conditioning ourselves to become to a certain degree, and who we are deep down inside is something totally separate. And this kind of seems to come through in the book. So it's this idea that you're not the role that you have created for yourself. You are something that's like much bigger than that, much more. So I often use the phrase as, you know, you came here with a whole energetic profile to become this person, but then you got into society and you got taught through schools and you got taught through your peers and you got taught through your parents and you became this, and it's often so far removed from who you are meant to be, which we can see this separation landing at the moment. And the other part of that is, as that separation occurs, there's an element of you're still with the people who are connected to society and conditioned by society and being who they think they're meant to be rather than who they are actually meant to be. So how you connect with them, how you communicate with them, what you share with them, what you don't, there's all that kind of stuff going on in there as well. A vibe from this book for me as well is once you see it, you can't unsee it. So once she starts to see these things, she literally cannot unsee them. And then of course we have a big, powerful loss. And that loss is an initiation. That loss is I can no longer tolerate this. I can no longer live like this. I can no longer pretend to be this when I'm really this. And that's kind of the power within what I see within book 2. Book 3, The Heir of Fire. Hair as in not this hair. This isn't fire, as in hair as in ancestral, passing things down, the hair. I don't know. Anyway, I just kind of got a vibe that my Yorkshire accent wasn't going to pronounce that right. Anyway, so book 1, Remembrance, Containment, Survival. Book 2, Truth and Awakening. Book 3, Dark Night of the Soul, the Ego Death. So book 2 gives this vibe of, you know, we end with this vibe of I can't live like this anymore. And book 3 is really the I must face who I really am. And as I say, this is the ego death. This is the stripping away of external validation. We've changed locations. We've not got any familiarity around us anymore, you know, and the body is literally shutting down at this moment, the numbness, all the other stuff, because the body is literally saying, I cannot carry on like this. And it's going to stop her continuing to live life like it was anyway. So, you know, you've got, sorry, just checking my notes. So, you know, that kind of, the body does stop us from continuing when we are so far down a path that is totally misaligned to us. And that can show up in different ways, like things like chronic fatigue. For me, it showed up in breast cancer. I got breast cancer, and that was like the kind of like, whoa, we can't continue like this. Something has to change. And if you continue to kind of walk that path and you don't heed that pivot point, then potentially, you know, your illness is going to become some kind of chronic illness. The body will stop you from, will try its hardest to stop you from continuing down that path. And you know, she's numbed out. She's kind of drinking on rooftops. It's all that kind of vibe. But when we first hit this book, she's had enough. She can't live like that anymore. She doesn't know who she's going to be. She's just stuck in this kind of like limbo land, right? And along comes a mentor, or you know, there is a mentor in this story, and this mentor is quite harsh. You know, there's no softness there. There's no kind of like true appreciation. I mean, there kind of is, you know what I mean? But there isn't. And that actually is really powerful, because that creates severs dependency. It creates independence within us. It creates this reliance on our own power, our own truth, our own validation of ourselves, not this external validation. You know, it pushes us inwards. It pushes us to understand the power of ourselves. Yeah, I've written facing the truth of your own power. You have to face the truth of your own power. That's kind of like the vibe of this whole book. In the midst of that, there is this knowing, this activation of how unprocessed pain actually blocks power. You know, the kind of the traumas and the obstacles and the challenges and the things that we've experienced, actually, when we take them on as a part of us, then they become something that actually blocks our own, like, our power, our superpower, right? It's not about this is who I am. It's about this is what shaped me, you know? And so it's about, it's like this, like almost like stepping into this next level version of herself, of instead of being caught up in all the knots of life and all the web of life and being caught, like wrapped up in it. It's like she kind of steps out of herself and can look in now. And this is the process of stepping. It's that metamorphosis. It's that moving from being caught in all that to seeing all that to now being able to like look in on it from a different perspective. I've written something here. What have I written? This is embodiment. This is stop learning, start becoming. You know, she begins to realize who she is. She begins to understand that ancestral knowledge. She stops identifying with what happened to her and starts actually becoming who she's meant to be. It's about sovereignty, not rebellion. And she understands that this power that she's got comes with a responsibility. Okay, this power that she's got isn't like flippant. I don't know what word I want to use. You know, it needs mastery. It needs understanding. It needs respect. And that is kind of all what I kind of get from book 3. So obviously, as I'm feeling these things, and I'm explaining these things to you, these are things that are coming through for me. And I live a cyclical life, and I see it so much where I live a year and I almost live the same year, but on a different level. The year after, as far as my becoming is concerned, not necessarily as far as my kind of like 3D reality around me, but as far as my becoming is concerned, I go through the same things every year, and it's like a cycle that lifts me up. So, you know, going through this cycle during a story over and over through the year helps me to kind of like lift up. So there we have it, book 3. Book 4, Queen of Shadows. Queen of Shadows. Okay, so in book 3, it was all about integration and that identity kind of stabilization, her understanding who she really is, and that kind of vibe. And book 4 is almost like putting that into practice. It's like that reclamation, that kind of like leadership role, you know? So the power moves from like an internal truth to actually an external impact. So she's embodied that power. She knows who she is. She knows what's going down. And now she comes back to that old world that she used to live in, but she's different. She's changed. She's got this internal power now. And her power isn't necessarily, it's kind of contained. It's kind of presence. Rather than explaining herself. She's there, she's calm, she's not chaotic, she's not reactive. It's not about I was just reading my notes. So it's not about proving power, it's about owning it. It's about that kind of like, I am this. This is who I am. This is who I am. She reclaims roles consciously rather than unconsciously ending up in those roles because of conditioning and society. She uses that kind of adaptability, being able to like put different masks on, live in different roles. She uses that adaptability as intelligence rather than inauthenticity. So it's all done with this vibe of witnessing herself. So instead of just ending up there and then being like, oh, this is me, she's like, this is me, but I am going to take this pathway for this purpose. Does that make sense? It's different. It's instead of just like being pushed around by life and then ending up there, she's like, do you know what? I know who I am strong in who I am, I have this presence, I have this power, and I'm going to take this pathway for that purpose. Yeah, it's different, okay? And by going back to that old world with this new, shall we say, persona, this new level of who she is, she kind of creates her own boundaries and sets her own, she puts her own tone over it, if you like. So like in life, you know, we've followed this journey. If we were doing this journey in real life right now, we would be coming back into our lives at the moment, and we would be setting boundaries around work, relationships, health, all the things. And it's about laying down those boundaries and saying, do you know what? Life isn't going to determine my health for me. I am me. I am going to determine my health or wealth or work or whatever it might be. And she learns to lead within that circle of friends, within her relationship. She learns to lead herself without self-sacrificing. So she doesn't sacrifice herself anymore, but she learns to lead herself within that kind of inner circle that of friends and people who she interacts with, without dimming herself down. She's there, and this is who she is, you know? And I feel like this book, Queen of Shadows, kind of leads with that energy of, I am me, this is who I am, and I'm going to lead that into my life rather than life leading me, if that makes sense. I don't know. And I've put a little note down here of ends self-blame. I'm not sure that's totally true, but maybe there is an element of that within this book, but obviously because I read the full, yeah. So this was the point where I brought in Assassin's Blade, which is the little kind of novella, the little prequel. And there's a lot of talk online about where to actually apply this. And for me, it had to be somewhere where I already had started to care about this character enough that I wanted to understand her backstory. And actually, I'm really glad I did it at this point, because I think if I'd have read Assassin's Blade before I got to this point, I don't think I would have cared about it enough. So for me, this was the perfect point. And this, for me, was really the leaning back and looking back on the younger self and almost forgiving the younger self, the younger version who didn't know. You know, she didn't know kind of how society worked, who she was, all this kind of stuff. And, you know, and I think that, you know, there's an element of having to, you know, you hear it online, you know, heal the inner child and all that kind of stuff. And I think there's certainly an element of that comes through in this book and that is activated in this book, that, you know, you do what you need to at the time. And you know, especially when you're a child, you trust the perspective of your parents, of your teachers, of the leaders of your society, and you think that they're, you know, that they're gonna, by listening to them, you're gonna find the right path, you're gonna find your success, all that kind of stuff. But you don't know enough about the world at that point to truly discern right from wrong. Maybe not right from wrong, the right path from what isn't right for you. And so I think this really is kind of like looking back into that. And I've written this is not what broke her, this is what forged her. And I think that's what we've got to think about, you know. It's looking back and seeing the meaning of it all, and looking back and seeing the breadcrumbs that brought you to where you are now. And this element of, I want to use the word forgiveness, you know, forgiveness of the younger you who didn't understand that was going to take you on that trajectory, or that didn't understand the way society is and the way the patriarchy is, and so you trusted, you know, what you were told, you trusted, you know, what direction you should take, when, you know, maybe even like your whole soul is screaming, you know, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, but you still do it because, you know, you've been conditioned to believe certain things. And I think it was really important that it was there. And for me, that is what it all activated. It was like looking back and being like, yeah, you know, there's a mention of this story, these little nuggets all the way through the books. And, you know, it certainly, it created who she became. And we are the culmination of all of our experiences, be them good, be them bad, be them challenging, be them exciting. We are the culmination of all those experiences. And I think, you know, that's what that book gave me at that point. Whether that book would feel different if you read it at a different point, I don't know, but I don't think I would ever put it anywhere else. I think it would always sit there for me. So even when I do my reread, I don't think I'm going to change the order. I think I'm still going to go in this same order. So yeah, Assassin's Blade. So I went on for books 5 and 6 to do the tandem read, because I'd heard a lot about it, and people were saying, you know, you get to the end of Empire of Storms and then Tower of Dawn kind of takes you back again. So you're kind of chomping at the bit for kind of like the next book, but you kind of get taken back in the story again. So I thought I'm going to do the tandem read, or tandem listen in my case. And so Empire of Storms, its theme is like standing fully in your power, you know? And Tower of Dawn is more about, can you hold the aftermath? What happens after, you know? So Empire of Storms, I've written down like the identity is claimed. It's absolutely claimed, and it's given publicly. There's no fear of being seen in fullness and who she is, and with that though comes this, like the end of the magic, because, you know, she's been kind of playing around with it. Not playing around with it, it's the wrong way of putting it, but it's kind of like, this is real now. Yes, your power is something, your superpower is something that you now hold, and you hold it really powerfully. And this is real now. What you're about to bring into the world, it is real. This is serious stuff now. So it kind of loses that kind of like magic, kind of flippantness. And this is about really kind of being powerful with it, you know, being purposeful with it, being strategic with it. This is real life now kind of vibe. And that kind of almost shatters a little bit as well, and creates this kind of vibe of was it worth it? Was the awakening, everything that you've been through, the fact that you've now harnessed this power, you understand this power, you've mastered this power, was it all worth it? And I feel like that is kind of the vibe of book 5. Tower of Dawn is really interesting to me because it takes you on a slightly different journey. And the journey in Tower of Dawn, or the theme that kind of really stood out for me, was the body. And it was about listening to the body, letting the body lead. There's a lot of stuff about, you know, there's a different land that we're in now. And so there's a lot of different beliefs. So we've got to decondition from those old beliefs again and realign and understand and see this bigger picture in this bigger world. There's a little bit of a love story going on through this one, and that love story is about being met where you are rather than being saved. There is saving in it, but it's not it's not really of that vibe. It is of the vibe of I'll meet you where you are, which is different, right? And there's a very sovereign energy to that. What else have I written? I've written it's about stepping into leadership. It's about being seen. It's about experiencing the backlash of that. And oh yeah, so this is kind of the vibe that I've kind of taken away. So this is legacy. These two books are legacy. These two books aren't self-development anymore. These two have changed the vibe slightly. So we're stepping into leadership, we're being seen, but we're getting a massive backlash from that. And can we still stand strong? Can we still, after being seen, after everybody seeing who we truly are and us stepping into that full power, when that backlash comes, can we still stand strong? And can we still continue our path without being knocked away from that path, you know? And obviously, I'm very aware that there are sub-stories and things like that going on as well. And obviously I'm going to deep dive into those a little bit more. You know, what Manani's going through is probably something very different to what Kael's going through, for example. And I am going to bring all that together when I do the deeper dives. But this is just like the top level, just feeling into it. The other thing that I became very aware of with these two books is our main female character is like facing one thing, living life in that way, blah, blah, blah. And she's doing all this stuff and she doesn't know where all these other people are who are part of her circle, or there are people who we start to learn a story of that person and then that person becomes really important and we start to learn a story. And so there's all this stuff that's interconnecting web that she really has no idea of what is going on with all these other people. But yet, as a reader, you start to get this vibe that this is all going to come together. This is all going to come together. And I think that there is a piece of that in life sometimes, you know. We have no idea what someone else is dealing with, what someone else is facing, what someone else is going through in their life. So, and we have no idea who is in the world, and we have no idea who is going to end up on our pathway and connected to us in some way, shape or form for some random reason, okay? And so sometimes we might feel like, how can I word it? So I come here and I do YouTube videos, right? And right now, at this moment, I've probably got 49 subscribers to this channel. And that's great. That's absolutely great. I love that 49 people are here listening to me. And I hope that you still get something from me. However, what I don't know is how many other people out there are going through something at the moment that at some point in their future, they're going to find this video and they're going to connect to me, and they might send me a message over this video and they might reach out to me and we might become the closest of friends. I have no idea. All I know and can see is my little world right now. What's going on in your little world over in there or over there or over there? I have no idea. And I really kind of felt that very much through these books. Kael's doing his thing. He doesn't know what anyone else is doing, but he's doing his thing and he's trusting that it's going to bring him back to where he's meant to be. Dorian's doing his thing. Manon's doing her thing. And that, you know, there's just this, it just kind of, I don't know, it just brought that through for me. So for me, it felt like a real sliding doors kind of, serendipity, kind of, meant to be, and, divine timing and, all that kind of stuff seemed to roll into this particular kind of book as well. So when we reach Kingdom of Ash, this is no longer about a woman becoming, a woman rising. This is about standing strong, okay? This is completion. This is the growth arc, the character arc that has kind of come to kind of completion. This identity that has been unleashed, that has been kind of like accepted and grounded and embodied, it's now at this point where it doesn't collapse. circumstances, life might change around our FMC, but she is still who she is. It doesn't change her at the core. She is still who she is. She still walks with that sovereignty, that power. She still comes at life from that energy of, this is who I am, and I am going to walk this path because of this. She doesn't kind of crumble. That identity doesn't crumble. Her choices are now rooted in the values of who she is rather than in any kind of outcome. So it is, so while I've just kind of said that, I kind of, she's driving life rather than life pushing her around. That's kind of what I meant when I said that before. But when she's acting on this, who she is now, rather than acting on what she wants, if that makes sense. So I'm this person, this is what I value, this is what I hold true, this is what makes me me, and I take action from that place, not from a place of, that's what I want, that's where I want to be, so I'll kind of like, you know, suppress this part of me, allow this part of me. Do you know what I mean? She's not like, she's stood in that power now, she's stood in who she is. And I've written, evil is confronted and not erased. And that is so true of life, because when you go through this kind of like awakening arc, which is what our FMC has been through, you know, you kind of see society in a certain way, and you can hear just from the vibe of how I speak when I'm talking about society and patriarchy and the matrix even, you know, however you want to word it, we are in a structure of processes and systems that drive us to live life in a certain way. However, when you step out of that and you look into it and you can witness it and you can see it, you still have to live within it. So that's why evil being confronted and not erased was kind of like a key point for me, because you can go through this powerful arc, you can become all this, you can embody who you truly are, sit in that identity, be energetically led, and still you have to kind of like live within this society. So it can never be erased. You've just got to learn how to stand in that power of who you are and let that be the driving force forward. Life continues, you know, life continues. So I've written down, I don't need to rise anymore, I am already here. That's kind of the vibe of who she is in this book. So I just wanted to touch on something else just before I kind of end this video. I'm sorry it has been a long one. If you haven't read the books, maybe this has inspired you to read the books. Maybe this just kind of, you know, helps you to understand why I do love fantasy books so much. But I wanted to look through the arc of the FMC and the MMC connection. And so I'm just going to read, I've kind of, I don't want to kind of go into it too deep because I don't want to give away too many spoilers. But like, no, the first kind of interaction together is, for her, is like the realization that nobody's going to save her. Nobody's coming to save her. But that is power in itself. It's not something that, you know, she's lost. It's a superpower within itself when she kind of like connects to that. Then she kind of like bears her soul, and there is this vibe of, you see me, and yet you're not afraid of me, or you're not running away from me, or you're not trying to manipulate me, you're just seeing me, you know? And I've written, you know, he witnesses her truth, he witnesses who she is. And this vibe that they have together is this, it's not this you complete me, but it's this you meet me and we walk together. And I think that this is a vibe that is really powerful. Maybe, you know, it's powerful that this is in these kind of books and young adults are reading these books, but I certainly think this is powerful for when you get a little bit older. Like, I am 49 now, and I think that there is a push to kind of, you know, find the knight in shining armor on the white horse, and, you know, for him to rescue you from your life and when you are kind of growing up, or certainly when I was growing up. But the vibe that actually, as a strong embodied woman, we are not looking for someone to save us. We're not looking for someone to complete us. We're looking for someone who will meet us and walk with us. And I think this is the same vibe as, I don't know if you've seen Yellowstone, but there was like a massive kind of like, you know, obsession that women had with Rip, the cowboy in Yellowstone. And there was a lot of analysis of that, and there was a lot of people saying the reason that people love him is because he allows Beth to just unleash her crazy all the time, and he holds space for that. He allows that kind of that feminine crazy. And we are, you know, when we let out our feminine energy, we can go from angry one second to soft and quiet the next second, and things like that. That, you know, the woman and the mood swings and the hormones and everything, it is kind of a bit crazy, right? But he holds space for that. He holds space for that crazy. And I kind of wrote this statement down, and I wrote, a woman who does not have to shrink, soften, perform, or suffer to be loved. That, and I think that is like a really key point, and it's quite powerful for women to be able to stand in who they are, and for their partner to hold space for that, and for it not to be something where she has to suppress her, who she is, to be loved by him, you know, to be helped by him. And I think that is a massive, powerful activation in itself, just because I have worked with women, I talk with women, and I see relationships playing out over social media and stuff like that. And I think that is one of the most powerful pieces. And I think for me, being in a relationship that is like that, I find that so supportive, so grounding, so powerful, so connected, that should be, for me, that's what women should be looking for. Not the rescue, not the man who's going to save them, but the man who understands who she is, sees her strength, sees her truth, doesn't expect her to shut herself down, to be quiet, to be smaller than who she is. That is really powerful, and I think that that is a key piece of this book too. So, to just kind of like do a bit of a summary, a bit of a roundup. Obviously there are sub-stories going on all the way through this book, and I've kind of focused more on the kind of the energetic vibe that's coming out of the FMC, apart from when I got to Tower of Dawn, which was a little bit different. But I really see in this book not a hero's journey, but a feminine remembrance arc. And that's why it's been really interesting to me. And the timing of this has been so interesting to me, but that is a whole other video. Anyway, so when you think about that whole kind of like feminine embodiment arc, you know, we're going from containment of energy to an awakening, to a collapse and a rebuild, to an embodied return, to expansion and seeing what consequences come from that expansion, then having to re-regulate and kind of, yeah, just re-regulate. And then it's this integration and this authority, like authorship of our lives. It's coming back into that. And it's not about kind of a woman who goes from kind of like, you know, nothing to queen of the world kind of thing. For me, that's not what this is about. It's not about how to gain power. It's about how a woman's power does not just rise once. It rises, it's contained, it's fractured, it's forged, it's embodied, it's kind of tested, and then it's integrated. And that is the whole kind of feminine arc. So for me, I think that is one of the reasons why these books were with me at this time, why they've come into my world at this time, and why I've felt that for me they weren't as powerful as the Empyrean series. The Empyrean series literally lit me up in so many ways, and I really do need to speak about that, but I want to journey through the books again to speak about it. There were so many activations in that, so much that I was like, you know, the discovery of witches, when I read that, there was so much in that as well. So This one didn't kind of hit the activation level of the Empyrean series, but the Empyrean series is so fast moving, and also you get to the end point and there's no end to it, whereas this was a full completion, and this was a slow burn for me, but it was something that, as it's slow burn, obviously it has activated me. I am a different person to who I was when I started reading this book now, and reading this book series, because we have to be, because going back to what I said at the start, you know, the mental activations, the neurological pathways, the body memories of emotion, of energetics, of frequency, who I am as a person, what I'm putting out is different now. And not only has that book created that for me, my own character arc and plot lines within my life while I was reading this book have also kind of changed me. In the same way as the Empyrean series, there was a whole boatload of stuff around that as well. You know, it's not just about what's going on in the book, it's about the book within the life that you're living, all of the stuff coming together. And the book basically, for me, creates like a thread that runs through it, and then my life kind of like, it's like a theme, like an undercurrent that runs through my life while I'm kind of going through things that I'm going through. And I can certainly see that as I followed this arc, I can certainly see where I am in the arc. I can certainly see where I need to go. I can certainly see what I've been through and things like that, which I think is just so powerful. So yeah, there you go. That's my kind of energetic kind of analysis of the Throne of Glass series from where I am right now. Rereads are always really powerful to me because you know the ending. You're not racing for the ending. You're not wanting to know what happens. You know what happens, and then when you follow it through from that perspective, it gives you a totally different perspective on it. So I'm excited for the reread, but because it's such a long series, I don't think I can bring myself to do the reread yet. Hence why I'm going to dip into Quicksilver and Brimstone, I think, over Christmas. There's a lot of darts on the telly over the next kind of 2 weeks, and I know Matt is going to be so watching that. So having a book series on the go in the background is going to be really helpful for me, because I can still sit with him and still eat the chocolate with him, I can still drink the wine with him, but I can tune out and watch something else while he watches the darts. So I think that's my plan of action. Come back to this, go into this a bit deeper in the new year. I might do Empyrean again in the new year. I'll see how I feel after I've done Quicksilver. I might go back to Empyrean. I might, before I do this deep dive again. Obviously, off the back of this as well, guys, I realise I have the whole Akatar and Crescent City to come. And I also have books that are in my wish list that I need to listen to, read, whatever as well. So there's a whole boatload of things going on right now. So that's where I'm at. I'll leave it there for now. Deep dive will come. If you find this kind of energetic thread, this vibe of what is it activating, exciting, as opposed to just dissecting the book and the plot lines and things like that, keep an eye on my channel because it will be coming. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed. See you later.